Okay, so it's probably time to get into the news.
So much news.
We have a lot of news, and we'll get into the beefiest part of that towards the end. The first story I have today is a massive relic galaxy without dark matter puzzles astronomers. The galaxy
I saw a little thumbnail for that, but I didn't read it.
The galaxy is called NGC 1277 and it's located.
Can they just give it a real name, for crying out loud? Does it have to be a number and a letter thing?
Well, I think it works for one reason, because they're viewing billions of galaxies now, and I don't know if we have a billion names. So
I need to be put on the name committee. I will name them. Just let me do it. This is ridiculous.
You know, it's like hurricanes.
Who the hell's going to remember? Who's going to remember NG 715.276W? Nobody.
Well, you know, I think when it comes to that naming, like if we were, you know, if it were to become significant for some reason, it would get a common name, but this is for scientific categorization. So there's got to be, just like we don't go around calling animals by their scientific names, right?
Exactly. So
but they still have a scientific name.
The galaxy's NG1756W.2.
Well, that's what scientists are calling it, so they know how to locate it.
Because they have no imagination. Sorry, science people.
Jeez.
That one's going to be called Cotton Candy Galaxy. Anyway, continue.
It's located 240 million light years away. It is a massive elliptical galaxy, and a galaxy of its size should have between 10 and 70% of its mass as dark matter. Its stellar mass is about 150 billion times the mass of the sun, and that's not a small galaxy. However, that is not what observations seem to indicate. Within the radius they observe, astronomers estimate that the galaxy cannot have more than 5% of its mass as dark matter and might as well have none. This doesn't make sense, especially since it is a relic galaxy, a galaxy that has not changed much over the last 12 billion years with a B. This result,
they know all of this because of math, right?
Well, they're looking at the star. Well, the galaxy itself is 240 million light years away.
So they're not like looking at it really.
So they're looking back 240 million.
They're getting
they are. Well,
information that they're mathematically using to figure this out.
It doesn't specifically say this, but they are using the James Webb Telescope now, which can look back really far.
Look that far. All right.
I don't know if that's what they're viewing it within this story, but we have talked about previous news stories where they are looking back almost to the point of the Big Bang now with telescopes. So it is possible, although I don't have that information if that's what they're using for this, but they're looking 240 million years into the past.
Yeah.
At a galaxy that they're supposing...
Gotta go back in time.
That a galaxy itself that's 12 billion years old. Now, imagine from relic galaxy they're talking about, this is probably one of the first galaxies that was formed if you go to the supposed age of our universe. So this result does not fit within the current accepted cosmological models, which include dark matter. Lead author Sebastian Cameron from the Institute. It's Spanish here, I think. Instituto de Astrofísica de Canarias. So, and the University of Laguna. The importance of relic galaxies in helping us understand how the first galaxies formed was the reason we decided to observe NGC 1277 with an integral field spectrograph. From the spectra, we made kinetic maps which enabled us to work out the distribution of mass within the galaxy out to a radius of some 20,000 light years. The lack of dark matter within this distance from the center of the galaxy doesn't make sense. The scientists have put forward two possible explanations, but neither of them is satisfactory to completely explain what the team is seeing. One is that the gravitational interaction with the surrounding medium within the galaxy cluster in which the galaxy is situated has stripped out the dark matter. The other is that the dark matter was driven out of the system when the galaxy formed by the merging of proto-galactic fragments which gave rise to the relic galaxy. The lack of dark matter certainly is a problem from the standard model of cosmology and its expectations, but it is even a bigger problem for the alternative theories that get rid of the need for dark matter by changing how gravity behaves instead. Although the dark matter in a specific galaxy can be lost, the modified law of gravity must be universal. It cannot have exceptions, so that a galaxy without dark matter is a refutation of this type of alternatives to dark matter. Co-author Ignacio Trujillo, also from the IAC and ULL explains. So in other words,
that one hurt my brain.
there is no scientific proof of dark matter.
Okay.
And it's the only way they've been able to get the models for how this stuff works to work out mathematically. So they think that it's there. But now they're seeing that in some galaxies, it is not there. And they don't know how those two things, because you have to have a unified theory.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Hold on a second. So there's no proof that dark matter exists,
No.
but they're really confused that it's not there. How do they know if it's not there if they don't know that it exists? What is this? What is this math?
Let me ask you a question. When you were in school, did you ever do algebra? And you did, x plus 3 equals 5?
Mm-hmm.
You don't know what x is, but you know that it has to be something to equal 5. So the answer's got to be 2. And that's what they're doing with the mass of galaxies. What's in the galaxy doesn't equal the mass that the galaxy is. And so there has to be some material there that they're not, and that's what they call dark matter.
Okay. So this galaxy
Doesn't have it.
Like its mass is like its mass?
Yes. And so now that would break up. In other words, this is creating a conundrum, just like it typically does in science, especially this field of science where they're constantly on the cutting edge of trying to deal with what they don't know. And so I think this could be a situation where they're going to have to rethink how all this stuff works.
So just to recap, galaxies have a mass and they calculate all the stuff in it, but it's not that number. So they're assuming something else is the rest of that number. But this galaxy, its number is its number. There's no extra stuff.
Yeah, well,
they don't
think
know what it is.
I actually said they think that there's like a 5% window there where they think there could
small.
be. Whereas before, I think it said in this article, I might be making it up, but I wanted to say it was close to like 50%.
Okay.
Oh no, here we go. A galaxy of its size should be between 10 and 70% of its mass should come from dark matter.
How much? Say it again.
10 to 70%.
10 to 70. Wow.
And it's only 5 or less.
Hoaxer says, I don't know how we can calculate our universe mass and stuff. I don't either. We're leaving that up to somebody else, hoaxers. Blue
People
said,
a lot smarter than myself.
It has to do with mass and less to do with mass and more to do with gravity. The gravity is stronger than the seeming amount of mass that exists. Hence, they posit the existence of dark matter. That's from Lars. Thank you, Lars. $10 on what Lars said because it sounds good.
Yeah,
Lars
like
says
I'm not.
It's like intelligence and politics. Intelligence and politics. They can't prove it.
Yeah, I mean it's outside of my. But it's important. There was a reason it's in the news is because it's something that could change.
So here's
how we think our universe is made, what it's made up of.
Here's a theory for you. Ready for my theory? So, in the Raw book and in Mark Hunter Brooks' Earth's Hidden Reality book, which I just did a review for on YouTube today, by the way.
Oh, cool.
I'm pretty sure he also mentions it in his book that there's spiritual mass, that the spiritual things that scientists aren't even willing to admit exist in the first place, has a mass also. So what if part of that missing mass is spiritual mass? And if this galaxy is so old, what if there's not a whole lot of living things left in it? And therefore, there is very little spiritual mass.
Yeah, well, and in that case, I guess you would just say that that's what dark matter is. But they don't really, they don't know what it is. That's why they call it dark matter.
It's like a dead universe. Like there's nothing left in it.
And they can't see it. They can't measure it. So they just call it dark matter.
Because they don't know what it is.
They have no clue what it is.
Because they're in the dark about it.
Yeah, they're dad joke. But it's they're trying to look out, and I give them credit. They're looking out into the stars and they're trying to figure out what, using the scientific method, what this universe is. And I think, especially on this show, that's a lot of what we're doing.
Yeah, Lars, I think Frosty, wasn't that one of the stories we had recently that Lars was talking about where they actually recorded gravity waves? Did you have that as one of our recent
gravity
stories?
Waves.
Yeah.
When that broke, we did have that on the news section. That was another huge scientific, one of the things they had theorized existed, but they couldn't prove it. And then finally they did. There are gravitational waves. They've never been able to measure them. And then they were.
Yeah, and then Luce is talking about the whole starseed theory too, that supposedly there's plenty of souls on Earth that actually have been on other planets as well. So what if, if she's a Palladian, if her soul is from some galaxy, from some planet in the Palladian star system, and they're not there anymore, then there's reincarnating here, then there wouldn't be spiritual mass left in that system.
Well, there you go. That could be a good scientific experiment for that. If you find that these really, really, really old galaxies are all missing dark matter because they're these dead galaxies,
we'll have to wait and see as they find more of them. If that's a pattern.
Yes, and that is correct, Lars. Yeah. Math usually lays the groundwork for theories that we can add credence to later. This is what the math is telling us, and now we got to find a way to prove that what we're saying through math actually exists. I think that's absolutely correct. Second article for tonight is physicists just figured out how wormholes could enable time travel.
Ooh, speaking of time travel.
Shortcuts through space-time, known as wormholes, aren't recognized features of the cosmos, but for the better part of a century, scientists have wondered if the weft and warp instructed by relativity prescribe ways for quantum ripples or even entire particles to break free of their locality. At their most fantastic, such
Hold on a second.
Yes.
Hold on 1 second. Did you say the warp and weft of the gravity?
Yes.
That's weaving.
Yeah.
Warp and weft are weaving terms.
Mm-hmm.
So the gravitational way, the way that gravity works is with warp and weft, like a weaving.
I haven't read the article yet.
It doesn't say that. Because, okay, hold on a second. So, all right. There's a lot.
She's on a roll tonight, folks.
Yes, I know specifically.
Email it to her.
I know specifically that the Maya culture has a creation story of how things were created, and it has to do with weaving.
Yes,
and it's like that in a lot of Central and South American cultures. Like their creation story is weaving.
Yes,
and if gravity works like that it's woven together, that's kind of crazy.
Yeah. But this is talking about relativity and quantum ripples. At their most fantastic, such reconfigurations in the fabric of the universe, there you go, would allow human-sized masses to traverse light years, to cross galaxies in a heartbeat, or perhaps move through time as quickly as one might through their kitchen. At the very least, exercises that probe the more exotic side of space-time behavior could guide speculation over the mysterious meeting point of quantum physics and the general theory of relativity. Wormholes are in effect little more than shapes We're used to dealing with single-dimensional lines, two-dimensional drawings, and three-dimensional objects in everyday life. Some we can intuitively fold, mold, and poke holes in. Physics allows us to explore the changes in situations we can't intuitively explore on the smallest levels. Quantum effects give distances and time some wiggle room. So Frolov, Kurthaus, and Zelenkov's time warp proposal involves what's known as ring wormhole. First described in
ringworms.
Yes.
We don't like
ringworms.
those.
First described in 2016 by the University of Cambridge theoretical physicist Gary Gibbons and University of Tours physicist.
There you go. Hold on. We're going back full circle here. That's why scientists can't name anything, because they just named a damn wormhole ring wormhole. They could have come up with a better name. So never mind. I'm retracting my statement. Scientists are not allowed to name the galaxies. Continue.
Theoretical physicist Gary Gibbons and University of Tours physicist Mikhail Volkov, distinct from spherical. Well, that's another thing too. You're talking about a global community of scientists. So, what good is it going to do you if they give it a name and it's in Mongolian? Like, you won't be able to pronounce it anyway.
I'm not saying it needs to be in a different language. I'm saying they know what ringworm is. So why didn't they come up with a word that was similar to ring, but was different, that meant like it's a circle? Anyway, continue. So they're saying that there's circular wormholes.
Mikhail Volkov. Distinct from spherical contortions of space-time we might attribute to black holes, the ring wormhole proposed by Gibbons and Volkov connects patches of the universe, or different universes for that matter, that are what we call flat. Considering interactions of electrical and magnetic fields called duality rotations and applying some choice transformations, ringed shaped masses could create some interesting distortions in what could otherwise be flat space-time, and voila, a hole in the universe that connects you to, well, somewhere you want to go nearby, or that's not nearby. So wormholes that make a ring shaped as opposed to being flat could basically create a system where you're folding up space-time to be able to travel.
Which they've had that part figured out for a long time.
Mm-hmm. But once again,
if you folded space and time, that you could go from one place to another. But they just didn't know how to do it.
Yeah, and now they're seeing mathematical calculations for how a wormhole could be formed that would allow for that to actually happen.
Yeah, they could just call it a ring hole. I was thinking while he was reading the rest of it, what other things are like a ring? And then I thought a donut. That could be a donut hole, which sounds way better and delicious. But donut holes don't actually have a hole in it, because that's the part that you eat that came out of the hole of the donut. So that doesn't make any sense.
I was actually reading a story the other day about how scientists are saying that there could be planets that could be donut shaped. They would have to be created though, but they could actually sustain that shape. And in the movie, the thing that I was watching, it actually showed the moon actually circling and going through the donut hole. It would have to be like an advanced. It would have to be like an advanced species where it's like basically like custom making planets and stuff.
Well, we're not.
Anyway,
we're not there.
Definitely not.
We can make donuts though, and that's a feat all in itself.
Number 3, Beetlejuice 2, a filming set in Vermont, is haunted by souvenir seekers. Souvenir hunters are haunting the Beetlejuice 2 movie set in Vermont. State police are investigating 2 thefts, one of the large lamppost topped with a distinctive pumpkin decoration and the other of a 150-pound abstract art piece taken from the vicinity of a cemetery. Someone bundled up the lamppost, covered it with a tarp, and fled at a high rate of speed in a pickup truck on July 14th, while the theft near the cemetery took place several days later. State police said Thursday the sequel to the 1980 film is filming in East Corinth near the New Hampshire border. The original Tim Burton horror comedy about a home haunted by ghosts, played by Gina Davis and Alec Baldwin and starring Winona Ryder, also was filmed in East Corinth. For the new movie, Michael Keaton is reprising his role as bio-exorcist Beetlejuice. The sequel also features Wednesday star Jenna Ortega and others. The movie is due to be released next year.
I wonder if Gina Davis and Alec Baldwin are going to be in it.
I don't know. And if they were, I don't know if they would say it yet, because it would probably be like you want some surprises, right?
Yeah.
But
and is Alec Baldwin allowed to work again after he accidentally supposedly accidentally killed people?
Yeah. I don't know.
I don't know either.
Not sure. It's a good question, though.
People stealing props off the Beetlejuice 2 set.
Yeah. Prop makers, I mean, it's a lot of money.
Those prop makers are going to be pissed. Yeah. You know how much time it took them to make those props? You're just stealing it.
Yeah. Scientists dispute Professor Avi Loeb's claim he found alien technology. So we talked about this particular Harvard professor before, who famously suggested the Oumuamua interstellar object observed in 2017 was an alien spacecraft rather than a cigar-shaped space rock. We talked about that on this program because he believed it was likely an interstellar object. This is down to two principal reasons. Firstly, IM-1 crashed into the Pacific at an incredible speed. And secondly, Loeb and his team have performed an initial analysis of the space rock, showing it was tougher than all other 272 meteors in NASA's Center for Near-Earth Object Studies catalog. So he has a theory that a lot of these asteroids went into the ocean. He goes down to the bottom. He collects them with a magnet. He found these objects, these tiny metal objects that are called spherules, and he's saying that he thinks they are alien technology.
So he usually collects meteors and stuff that fall.
Yeah, well, that's something he started doing, but yeah, he's been in that field, and he's a Harvard professor, and he studies.
But he collected some stuff recently that
asteroids,
is not rocks.
Well, that's what he says. Last month, Loeb's team dragged a magnetic sled beneath their expedition boat to collect metal from the ocean floor. They collected numerous tiny spherical objects called spherules. Initial analysis showed the tiny balls were composed of an unusual combination of iron, magnesium, and titanium. Yeah, there's the Virginia accent there.
There's a lot of iron in them space balls.
Last month, controversial theoretical physicist Avi Loeb made the headlines yet again when he claimed tiny spherules recovered from the bottom of the Pacific Ocean were likely alien in origin. In an interview with the New York Times, he stated that they are most likely a technological gadget with artificial intelligence. Now, several scientists have challenged Loeb's assertions, with some accusing him of being unscientific. A Harvard professor's hunt for alien technology. It was a $1.5 million expedition off the coast of Papua New Guinea.
Now they're going to take all his money away because he said it seemed like it was not from here.
So, looking at what other scientists are saying.
They're sitting around, calling things ringworms. So
they're saying he has a real breakdown of the peer review process and the scientific method, and it's demoralizing for other scientists. Peter Brown, a meteor physicist at Western University in Ontario, concurred, suggesting that Loeb shouldn't make such bold proclamations during the early analysis phase. It's not uncommon for detected events to appear interstellar at first, only to be chalked up to a measurement error. Introspective of Loeb's early assertions. In the ongoing debate, the Harvard professor has sent spherular samples to Harvard University, the University of California, Berkeley, and the Bruker Corporation in Germany for more in-depth analysis. Ultimately, much like those arguing against his claims, Loeb will hope it's the science that does the real talking.
Hopefully, he kept some of them for himself and he didn't send them all away, because whenever people send things away, they always get lost and nobody ever sees them again.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then finally, for the crown jewel this evening, officials and lawmakers push for more government transparency on UFOs.
That was a good transition into the UFO subcommittee.
Yeah, if you haven't heard, yesterday was the House subcommittee meeting on UAPs and UFOs, and I watched it. I took some notes that we can kind of discuss, things that just kind of popped out that were interesting to me. But 3 retired military veterans testified Wednesday at a House hearing on unidentified anomalous phenomena, commonly known as UFOs, warning that their sightings are a national security problem and that the government has been too secretive about them. A House Oversight Subcommittee convened Wednesday's hearing on UFOs, as the lawmakers who pushed for the hearing are calling for the government to be more forthcoming about the unidentified anomalous phenomena. If UAP are foreign drones, it is an urgent national security problem. If it is something else, it is an issue for science. In either case, unidentified objects are a concern for flight safety, said Ryan Graves, a former Navy pilot who now runs Americans for Safe Aerospace, a group he founded to encourage pilots to report incidents of UAPs. The government characterizes the unexplained sightings as UAPs and has released reports on the case in recent years. Graves and David Fravor, a retired U.S. Navy commander, both testified about their own sightings of UAPs while they were serving in the military. David Grush, a former Air Force intelligence officer, alleged that the government has covered up its research into the unidentified sightings and said he reported information to the intelligence community inspector general. The technology that we faced was far superior than anything we had, Fravor said of the episode he witnessed in 2004 when asked why UAPs are a national security threat. Was
that one of the Tic Tac guys?
Yeah. The hearing and the latest push by lawmakers, intelligence officials, and military personnel working on unexplained aerial phenomena to probe the issue on a national platform. This is an issue of government transparency, said Representative Tim Burchett, a Tennessee Republican who pushed to hold Wednesday's hearing. We're not bringing little green men or flying saucers into the hearing. We're just going to get to the facts. We're going to uncover the cover-up, and I hope this is just the beginning of many more hearings. So a round of applause for Representative Tim Burchett, because he was very surprising yesterday. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. UAPs, whatever they may be, may pose a serious threat to our military and our civilian aircraft, and that must be understood. Democratic Representative Robert Garcia of California said we should encourage more reporting, not less, on UAPs. The more we understand, the safer we will be. Both Garcia and Representative Jared Moskowitz, a Florida Democrat, said that it was important.
That's from the American. Is that what it's called? American Tale?
Yeah. It was an important for Congress to work on the issue in a bipartisan manner in order to press for more government transparency. Many Americans are deeply interested in this issue, and it shouldn't take the potential of non-human origin to bring us together. Grush claimed that the U.S. government not only has UAPs in its possession, but also the remnants of the allegedly non-human pilots of the aircraft. However, when he was pressed, he made it clear this was what he has been told by others and did not have first-hand information. That's not something I've witnessed myself, he said. Grush told the panel he could provide a list of cooperative and hostile witnesses who could provide
cooperative and hostile witnesses.
Yeah, who could provide Congress with more information about the programs related to UAPs. To continue,
I suggest that they go to the cooperative ones first.
Well, it's talking about the people who are trying to offer other people.
Yeah, the hostile ones are going to be a little dangerous.
Representative Matt Gaetz, a Florida Republican, said that he sought information about the incident he was told about from Eglin Air Force Base in Florida. Gaetz said when he went to Eglin, he was initially denied, but eventually shown an image of the episode, of which he claimed, "I'm not able to attach any human capability either from the United States or from any of our adversaries." This is what a U.S. congressman is saying after seeing the video. Graves said that a stigma remains for both commercial and military pilots when it comes to reporting UAPs. Last year, the House Intelligence Committee held the first congressional hearing on UAPs in decades, and Kirkpatrick's testimony was the first Senate hearing on the matter in recent memory. Of the 650 cases the government is tracking, Kirkpatrick said, we've prioritized about half of them to be anomalous, interesting value, and now we have to go through those and go, how much of these do I have actual data for? So
what was the number again?
Right now, it's 650 cases that the government is tracking. Half of them is what they're prioritizing.
So out of 650, they're like prioritizing 325.
Yes,
that's a lot.
It is.
It makes me think of when Cheryl Costa was on and was talking about the astronomical number that even if you threw out all the other ones, like if you just took like 1%, that it was still like a huge number, you know?
Yeah. I mean, if you watched it, I mean, it went beyond my expectations. So I did take some notes. Tim Burchett was kind of the Representative Tim Burchett from Tennessee. He was the one who was kind of heading up the thing. He started off basically talking about how he thinks there's a huge cover up. And that they had tried to create a bill that would make it where UAPs from pilots would be reported directly to Congress. So like if an Air Force pilot, Navy pilot, commercial pilot saw a UAP, that report would go directly to probably a committee on national defense or whatever.
Like they would also have access to the information.
Yeah, they would be told when it happened, since it was an issue of national security and they're in the National Security Subcommittee. And he was told, the representative, that the intelligence community did not like that, and the amendment wasn't even brought up for a vote.
But wait a minute, Frosty. Didn't you say that they were the subcommittee on national security?
Yeah. Well, I think that's one of the things.
Somebody else said that the subcommittee of national security isn't allowed to look at the national security information. What does this mean?
It's interesting, right? Another thing I put in my notes yesterday was Representative Anna Luna from Florida. Her opening quotes and her opening comments was, "It is unacceptable to continue gaslighting Americans into thinking this is not happening or that the potential of intelligent life forms existing other than humans." We were
Anna Luna.
She goes on to say we were even denied access to a classified briefing prior to the hearing due to the amount of hoops that they had to jump through. So there was
denied access to a classified hearing of the things that they're supposed to be looking at and talking about. So what does this mean?
So going on, Ryan Graves, who was a former F-18 pilot, who flew combat missions and Operation Enduring Freedom. He experienced UAPs. One I thought was interesting to mention, he witnessed a UAP 10 miles off the coast of Virginia Beach, not too far from where we are now.
We were just at the beach.
And talks about a gray or black cube inside a clear sphere.
Now, that is one that I have not ever heard of before. A dark colored cube inside of a clear sphere. Has anybody else heard of that kind of UFO before? That's crazy. And
he starts talking about how there would be like many of them, and they would form like these diamond shaped formations. This is just 10 miles off the coast. And then he said he didn't see this one, but he had another pilot and his squadron come back from a flight totally shaken up because he almost hit one or came within 50 feet of one on coming into land at the Naval Weapons Station. He said UAPs are in our airspace and that the sightings are routine. That there was a stigma attached to this. The stigma attached was challenging our national security, and excessive classification practices keep crucial information hidden. He said since 2021, all UAP videos are labeled secret or above. And that the UAPs became so frequent that crews began to discuss their risk as part of their regular pre-flight briefs.
Yeah.
Which to me was kind of astonishing because...
Which you you weren't in the Air Force, but you were in the Army. And I know that I heard many a story about your safety briefings, which usually included don't sexually harass someone and drink water. And there's our try not to run into any UFOs.
That became a standard in their pre-flight briefings of like, hey,
so if just imagine the Air Force briefing. So today y'all are going to go up in the sky and do some little flying, and you're going to do this and you're going to do that. So remember, while you're doing that, don't sexually harass anybody, drink water, and by the way, don't run into any UFOs.
Yes. But to me, it was astonishing because at that point you're saying like almost every time they're flying down there at the beach, and this basically goes for the whole East Coast because of how fast they can go.
Mm-hmm.
They're basically saying like, hey, keep an eye out for these things. Make sure that, you're aware that this is a possibility before you go up in the sky. Like it's not a random thing that's happening. Like this one time I saw this thing, it's become so frequent that they're like prepared for it when they're taking flights.
That's pretty crazy.
Grush, who was the guy that article we had in Discord, still not completely sure about what I think about his story, but he was an Air Force intelligence officer, and he I don't know what the civilian rank was, but it's equal to a full bird colonel. So this guy isn't just some guy with a mop in his hand that decided to become a whistleblower. Like this guy has stuff to lose. Basically, without saying it, was asked if people had been harmed to keep these things secrets, and he said that he could only speak about it in a closed session. Most of his answers
which means the answer to has anyone been harmed because of this is yes. Because if the answer was no, he could have just said no. But he said he had to talk about it in a closed session, which means yes.
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 And he's the one who said that he could provide the corporations. Well, and he was talking about the corporations that are involved.
Corporations.
Yeah, the companies that were involved that have, because he was talking about the fact that he's been told by people high up in the intelligence on the inside have collected extraterrestrial crafts and extraterrestrial biologics or bodies, which he hasn't seen for himself. But this, the U.S. government doesn't do any of that. Like they have Northrop Grumman and companies that make all the military. So
you're talking about the corporate companies that would be building the things,
reverse engineering them,
alien technology that they have recovered. Yeah.
So basically, he, through saying that, he also basically said that we're reverse engineering.
With Northrop Grumman is like the one that builds like everything.
Yeah. Well, that was just in the company I named, but that would be one of the ones. There's some other Lockheed Martin, places. Skunk Works. He also talked about DARPA. DARPA was mentioned, which is another one of those things. When you talk about, it's a name that comes up. And then the last guy I wanted to talk about was the third witness yesterday, and that was Commander Fravor, retired U.S. Navy Black Aces. So His training was suspended and put into World War tasking. So they were supposed to go out on the coast in the Pacific Ocean. I think they were flying out of San Diego. They were going out on a training mission, and then they get told that they're actually going to go do a real world mission, that the training has been suspended. They were told they would investigate objects that have been coming down rapidly from 80,000 feet to 20,000 feet. And then he mentioned, in case people didn't know, that basically if you go over 80,000 feet, you're in space. And this had been happening for 2 weeks.
Wow.
They went to investigate white Tic Tac objects. They approached the area. Commander Fravor went to investigate the object while others watched from above. And the Tic Tac accelerated and disappeared. Then he was radioed, and their contact said that the object was now 60 miles away, and that happened in less than a minute. He said he would let Congress calculate that speed. The incident was never investigated. The crew was never questioned. And the tapes for that encounter were never taken. So they just pretended like it didn't happen.
Yep. We don't know what's happening, so we're just going to pretend like nothing's happening.
And when he was questioned about that, they asked, he was pretty adamant. He said that not only do we not have that technology, but that none of our adversaries have that technology. And he theorized that we wouldn't even have that technology 20 years in the future. So he then told Congress that they could figure out for themselves where that technology would have to come from. It was really interesting because, people, it wasn't, I was expecting to hear lots of like talking out the side of their mouth and stuff like that. But it was pretty open. The terms extraterrestrial was used. Term alien spacecraft was used.
Priestess of Wonderland said, speaking of the Tic Tacs, this came up in this yesterday, that the velocity at which they maneuvered would not be possible for a human to survive.
Yes. Yeah. Because the Jeep, well, imagine going 60 miles in a minute. Oh, was that the speed, or was it even faster than that? Yeah. 60 miles.
60 miles
in a minute.
Not
an hour. We go 60 miles an hour.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Think about that.
You fly in a plane 500 miles an hour.
Yeah.
I mean, these things can basically, and you're not even saying that's top speed. That could be them just, well, and there was also theories brought up in the meeting yesterday. I think you would have enjoyed, actually, things that we've talked about before. But when they talked about it being possibly extraterrestrial, Grush said that he wouldn't limit it to that because there was also possibilities of being interdimensional and things like that.
Interdimensional or time travel?
Yeah. Hologram. They also brought up the idea that they could be holograms that are being sent from other parts of space.
Yeah.
So they're not actually traveling at that speed. Like they
could be remotely, they could be remotely driven where nobody's actually in it anyway.
Yeah.
They could be holograms.
They could just be projecting an image.
Yes.
Wherever they want it to be projected. Very similarly to remote viewing, which is what...
Excellent transition.
We are going to talk about next.